In this lesson, we are going to look at memory and learning. First, we are going to introduce the memory part, introduction to memory. We need to know what is memory and the type of memory which we possess. There are two major memory systems which we possess or which we have. The first one is the working memory or the short-term memory. And the second one is the long-term memory. Now let's look at the working memory. Your working memory is part of the memory that has to do with what you are immediately and consciously processing in your mind. What you are learning at the moment goes into your working memory or the short-term memory. Your working memory is centered out of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is this yellow part of the brain here in front of your head. This part of the brain is what we refer to as the prefrontal cortex. This is where your working memory is located or is centered. Your working memory holds only about 4 chunks of information. Actually, the capacity of your working memory is small and it can hold only 4 chunks of information. Chunks of information, these are packets of information, or it is like a package of information. Therefore, each chunk can hold 1 package, and you can only hold 4 packages of information. This means that your working memory cannot hold a lot of information at a go. Your working memory is like a blackboard, but it is not a very good blackboard. It is a very poor mental blackboard. Whatever you write on that blackboard cannot stay for a long period of time. Repetition is needed for the information to stay in your working memory. As I have said, this is a poor mental blackboard. Information cannot stay there for a long time. Therefore, for you to keep information in your working memory and it is for a short period of time, you have to repeat the information. Repetition stops your metabolic vampires. That is your natural dissipating processes from sucking those memories away. Now you know there are metabolic processes which takes place in our brains, in our neurons, the cells which make up our brain. Now, when these metabolic processes happen, sometimes they suck away the memories or the information which we have acquired. Now, for you to prevent this memory loss, you have to repeat the information which you are learning. Next, let us look at an example of how you have to repeat the information for it to be stored in your working memory. Let's say you want to write or to save a phone number in your phone and you don't have a chance to write it down. Maybe you don't have a pen. Therefore, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to repeat the phone number to yourself several times until you have a chance to write it down. I think most of you have done this. You want to write a phone number, you have no pen, you want to take a phone number from a friend. Therefore, you tell your friend to repeat it maybe 1 or 2 times. You try to store it in your working memory, then you save it, and after some minutes or some hours, you forget that number. It is no longer in your memory. That's how our working memory behaves. So, working memory or short-term memory is like an inefficient mental blackboard. The next type of memory is the long-term memory. And our long-term memory is like a storage warehouse. It is distributed over a big area. You can see the background picture there. That is a warehouse. It covers a wide area, and there are so many things stored inside the warehouse. That is similar to our long-term memory. Long-term memory storage capacity is big. It's got room for billions of items. Our long-term memory, as opposed to the short-term memory, it has a very big memory capacity, and you can store a lot of information. Billions and billions of information are stored in our long-term memory. So many items can bury each other, so it can be difficult for you to find the information you need unless you practice and repeat a few times. Now, as in a warehouse, there are so many things. Therefore, for you to locate a certain product easily inside the warehouse, you have to be conversant with the arrangement of things in the warehouse. You have to be somebody working in that warehouse maybe for a long time. Therefore, you know each and every corner of the warehouse, and you know where certain items are. And it becomes easy for you to get the item in the warehouse. It is the same case with our memory. With your memory, the long-term memory, there are so many information which you have stored there. Therefore, to make it easy for you to remember the information you have stored in your long-term memory, you have to practice and repeat so many times. And the repetition and the practice will make it easy for you to remember the information. Long-term memory is important because it is where you store fundamental concepts and techniques that are often involved in whatever you are learning. Now, our long-term memory is very important. Whatever we are learning has to be stored in our long-term memory so that we can remember for a long period of time, and this will help us use those concepts and techniques which we have learned whenever we need them. From working memory to long-term memory, how do the information move from your working memory to your long-term memory? You are learning certain concepts. The first thing, the information or the material will go into your working memory when you are learning new things. Now, how do you move that material from your working memory, which is a poor mental blackboard? You move them to your long-term memory, which is your mental warehouse, to store them for a long period of time or to retain the information you have learned for a long period of time. There are two ways to transfer or to save the information from your working memory to your long-term memory. The first one is spaced repetition, and the second one is practice. You have to repeat what you have learned. And spaced repetition means you don't repeat in the same study session. You learn in one study session, then you give yourself a break, maybe a day or two, then you repeat again whatever you learned a day before or 2 days before. That is what it means by spaced repetition. And with practice, this applies mostly to practical subjects like sciences, mathematics. You have to solve those problems. You have to practice solving those problems. Maybe skills like in football or sports and games. If you want to acquire certain skills in a certain sport or a certain game, you have to practice. Spaced repetition is a technique that involves repeating what you are trying to retain over a few days. Spaced repetition is like building the brick wall. If you don't leave time for the mortar to dry, the wall will crumble. Now, this is what I have said. You have to space. You have to give whatever you are learning time before you learn it again. It's like when you are building a brick wall. The first day you're going to build maybe 2-3 courses. You're going to lay the bricks. Then you have to leave the wall to dry up. Then the following day you come and put some 2-3 courses again, and you do it like that till you finish building the wall. But if you try to build the whole wall from the bottom to the top the same day, what will happen is the wall will fall. It will crumble and fall down. That is the same way our memory is transferred from short term to long term. You have to repeat and you have to give the repetition space so that that knowledge which you are learning can stick or can be stored or can be saved in your long-term memory. Now we have 2 walls there. The complete wall, which is strong and stable, that is same as spaced repetition. Under the second picture, you can see there is a wall here which is crumbling. That is unspaced repetition. That is when you are learning and in the same study session, you repeat whatever you're learning maybe 10, 20 times. That one is just a waste of time. It does not make any difference and it will not help you put whatever you're learning into your long-term memory. Spaced out time is needed for the synaptic connection to form and strengthen. Therefore, for you to form strong neural connections in your brain, you have to space your repetition. That spacing enables your neurons to connect strongly, and you keep that information for a long period of time in your long-term memory.